There are probably two kinds of reaction to Valentine's Day. One, it's a stupid holiday made up to sell greetings cards. Two, it's a way to show someone that you really care about them. I don't know what you're getting so excited about. I hate you. I did look for some opinions, and people in relationships said things ranging from, it's kind of like a birthday but more romantic, to, we're not all that bothered. While single people naturally weren't all that bothered, because it's not like they get any more single on Valentine's Day. Do they? But St. Valentine's Day is kind of a weird thing because, like St. Patrick's Day and St. Stephen's Day, it's one of the few saints' feast days that has remained widely popular. For example, Michaelmas, the feast of St. Michael and all the angels, is not nearly as popular as it was in the Middle Ages, and Archangel Michael defeated Lucifer in the War of Heaven. All St. Patrick did was convert a bunch of Gaelic people, and as we'll see, we don't really know all that much about St. Valentine. That said, Michaelmas was mostly about settling your accounts, the start of the academic year, and the eating of goose, which is a little bit of a harder sell than that guy's chased all the snakes away, let's go to the pub, or lovey-dovey hearts and romance day. And Valentine's Day is kind of a big deal. In fact, here's some stats to prove it. Annual average Valentine's Day spending, $13.19 billion. Number of Valentine's Day cards exchanged annually, 180 million. Average number of roses produced for Valentine's Day, 196 million. Percent of Valentine's Day cards bought by women, 85%. Percentage of flowers bought by men, 73%. Percentage of women who send themselves flowers on Valentine's Day, 14%. The average consumer spends $116.21 on Valentine's Day. 61.8% of US consumers celebrate Valentine's Day. And here's a big one. 53% of women would end their relationship if they got nothing for Valentine's Day. Lastly, the number of children conceived on Valentine's Day, 11,000. But there are some big questions we've got to ask before we go any further. Firstly, who was this Saint Valentine? Secondly, why is this feast day associated with romantic love? It should be fairly simple because Valentine is the patron saint of lovers, happy marriages and engagements, but Saint Raphael is the patron saint of love, and should love kind of trump all of those things? Because without love you don't get happy marriages, engagements and weddings. Incidentally, Saint Valentine, also patron saint of beekeeping, epilepsy, plague, and not fainting. It does make you wonder if that Venn diagram intersects anywhere and there's like a happily married beekeeping plague victim out there who doesn't faint a lot. So why do we celebrate love on St. Valentine's Day and not on St. Raphael's Day, the 24th of October? Well, firstly, you might say October is not the most romantic of months. The answer is probably because Raphael didn't get his own day until 1921, and since 1969, Raphael's feast day has been lumped in with all the other archangels on September 29th, St. Michael and all the angels' day. Meanwhile, St. Valentine's Day has been around since 469 AD, but actually identifying Valentine is very difficult, because February 14th belongs to 3 different Valentines. And furthermore, being called Valentine in the late Roman period was kind of like being called John Smith today. It was a really common name because it came from the Latin Valio, and there were emperors and popes named Valentine, and there are up to 30 different Saint Valentines and some Saint Valentinas. Although it is quite likely that a lot of nameless martyrs got the name attached to them posthumously. But the 3 Valentines who share February 14th are 1. A guy we know literally nothing about except he died in Africa and had a few followers. And the other 2 were a Roman priest and the Bishop of Turini, who were supposedly executed by Claudius II and then buried on the Flaminian Way about 60 miles apart from each other, sometime between 269 and 273 AD. And it's quite possible that they were the same person, or that people just confused the two because their followers couldn't quite remember which day their martyr died on. The priest Valentine was said to have been arrested and brought before the Emperor Claudius during a time of Christian persecution. He refused to denounce his faith, and Claudius was kind of swayed by him, but an advisor said, "Don't go listening to this Christian mumbo-jumbo," and he threw him in a prison. Valentine then proceeds to pray for his jailer's household, who then says, I have this blind daughter, so if you could maybe cure her, that would be cool. Valentine then cures her, and his jailer's entire household converts to Christianity. And when Claudius finds out that Valentine's been both converting people and performing miracles, he chops his head off. The problem with this is that neither Claudius I nor Claudius II ever persecuted Christians. In fact, Claudius II was never really in Rome all that much and only reigned for a very brief period. The bishop story is pretty much the same, except instead of a jailer, it's a scholar named Crato, and instead of a blind daughter, it's a son who is contorted by disease. Crato hears Valentine has a track record for curing contorted diseased children, and he says, "Come here and cure my contorted diseased child." Valentine says, "Yes, I will help you, but you've got to convert to Christianity first." Crato, being an academic, says, "Well, let's talk about this for a while." So they have a debate. Eventually, because they're getting nowhere, Crato says, "Well, my son's kind of dying, so if you can cure him, I will convert." Valentine cures him. The Roman Senate finds out and promptly has him beaten up and killed. Crato then takes Valentine and buries his body, and for doing so, Crato is also killed. There is actually very little evidence for these stories being true, and most scholars agree that they're probably not. But how does curing blindness or disease make you the patron saint of love? It doesn't. So how did Valentine end up getting attached to love, marriage, in a day filled with overpriced restaurants and flowers? One theory is that Valentine's Day usurped Lupercalia, a Roman festival of fertility, among other things. Some scholars have suggested that on Lupercalia there was a sort of lottery where young men and women would pair off in a sort of Roman blind dating, although others disagree and say Lupercalia just sort of petered out. There is a chance that the association with love comes from the fact that Valentine was buried near where the festival of Anna Perenna took place. This is a festival where men and women met at the first marker on the Flaminian Way, partied, and paired off. There are also some stories of Valentine performing marriages, but this seems to be a later addition, adding to the whole love mythos of Saint Valentine. But the real reason for Valentine's association with love: poets. Not the poetry of my beloved T.S. Eliot, by the way. Specifically, a 14th century poet named Geoffrey Chaucer, because the first recorded evidence we have for St. Valentine being linked to romantic love is from Chaucer's The Parliament of Fowls, which was written to celebrate the anniversary of the engagement of Richard II to Anne of Bohemia. "For this was on St. Valentine's Day, when every bird cometh there to choose his mate." I can't read Chaucerian English, so you're going to have to deal with that translated version. Valentine was considered to be a pretty name, and his feast day fell at the beginning of spring. So the name becomes attached to nature and birds mating, and then love poetry. It also helps that in the 14th century English calendar there weren't that many euphonious-sounding saints in February. Compare Valentine to Scholastica, Ostroberta, Eulalia, and Ermenhilde. I mean, they're more fun to say, but you're not going to get good poetry out of Ostroberta. Also, I don't know if I'm saying those right because, again, I can't speak Middle English, and references to St. Valentine in poetry would continue on over the centuries. Probably the most famous Valentine poem first appeared in Gammer Gurton's Garland in 1784. "The rose is red, the violet's blue, the honey's sweet, and so are you. Thou art my love, and I am thine. I drew thee to my Valentine. The lot was cast, and then I drew, and fortune said it should be you." What? Don't look at me like that. I was just reading off of the script. Look, it's a poem. It wasn't about you. Look, you're a chef. I'm a historian. It wouldn't work out. The sending of love poetry became commercialized in 1787 when The Young Man's Valentine Writer was published. This allowed young men who couldn't write poetry to select their favorite verses from the book and send it to their beloved. Think of it as funkypigeon.com for the 18th century. The 19th century saw the invention of the greetings card, and in the 20th century, Valentine's gifts diversified into things like chocolate and stuffed animals and 50 Shades of Grey and all the other novelty nonsense we have today. Whether you like it or not, Valentine's Day exists. You don't have to celebrate it. It really depends on you and your other half, if you have one. But if your other half is one of those 53% of American women who will dump someone for not buying a Valentine's Day present, and you value that relationship, I would say go buy flowers or something. Maybe under your breath you can curse Geoffrey Chaucer while you're at it. Happy Valentine's Day.